Our last video for this topic is to solve quadratics. So again, we've done the hardest part, which is learning how to factor. Now we're going to use that in order to actually solve a quadratic equation. So we have the steps at the top. So the biggest thing is we have to have 0 on one side of the equation. If we look at our first example in our first U-try, we already have that. Next, check for GCF, factor the left side, set each set of parentheses equal to 0 and solve, then check your answer. So if we look at our first example, we already have 0 on one side and it's already factored. So we can actually skip to step 4 by setting each set of parentheses equal to 0 and solving. So again, on the left we got a two-step equation, on the right, one-step equation. So we have two solutions. Go ahead and do the U-try. Our next problem is we're going to solve a quadratic via factoring by taking the GCF out. So the first step for any quadratic equation is to get 0 on one side. So I'm going to subtract 15x over. So I end up with 5x squared minus 15x equals 0. So because I have a GCF, that's my first step for every factoring problem, I need to take it out. The GCF is 5x, leaving me x minus 3 inside the parentheses. Now that it's fully factored, I set each set of parentheses equal to 0 and solve. So we get a solution of x equals 0, and then when we add 3 to both sides, I get x equals positive 3. Go ahead and do the U-try. Example number 3, solving a quadratic via trinomial factoring where our leading coefficient's 1. Our first example, we already have 0 on one side, but you'll notice the U-try, you're going to need to add 20 to both sides first. Then factor the left. So double bubble because we don't need to use the box method. What multiplies to positive 56 and adds to negative 15? That's going to be negative 8 and negative 7. So set each set of parentheses equal to 0 and solve. Add 7 to both sides for the first one. Add 8 to both sides for the second one. Two solutions, we're done. Go ahead and do the U-try. Make sure you get 0 on one side first. Solving a quadratic via trinomial factoring where our leading coefficient's not equal to 1, so we have to use the box method. So first there is a typo. It should be a positive 4, not a negative 4 on that right side. And then we're going to need to move it over. So we're going to, since it's positive 4, we're going to move it by subtracting it. So we've got 2x squared plus 7x minus 4 equals 0. There's no GCF, so we have to use the box method. And I'm going to go through this pretty quickly because we've already done it. Factor to the left, factor to the top, and then I have my factored form. X plus 4 times 2x minus 1 equals 0. Set each of those sets of parentheses equal to 0 and solve. So we get x equals negative 4 and positive 1/2. Go ahead and do the U-try. Last example, solving a quadratic via difference of squares. So our first thing we need to do, get 0 on one side. So I'm going to subtract 2 over. 8x squared minus 2 equals 0, and then I have a GCF of 2. So because it's an equation, I can just divide everything by that number. Because it's an equation, I can make it go away. Then I'm left with difference of squares. 4x squared is a perfect square, 1 is a perfect square, separated by a subtraction sign, so we can go right to our double bubble and take some square roots. The square root of 4x squared is 2x, opposite signs, and the square root of 1 is 1. Set each of those equal to 0 and solve. We get negative 1/2 and positive 1/2. So go ahead and do that U-try, and don't forget to take the GCF out first.